Well, hello everyone. My name is Daniel Dacom and I work for the Addictions Foundation of Manitoba, and welcome to our booster session today, Wellness Workday. The booster sessions are short, timely, and relevant presentations designed to fit into busy schedules. As we all know, COVID-19 has challenged health systems workers to change how we conduct ourselves in the workplaces, our homes, and our social connections, and these changes can sometimes feel overwhelming. So to support health system workers, Shared Health and the Psychological Health and Safety Committee partners brought together skilled trainers from across the province to facilitate a number of staff booster sessions. So these sessions are done live and then rebroadcast and made available as video on demand. If you are watching on April 13th, then you're watching the live session. You have the opportunity to ask questions using the GoToWebinar dashboard to the right side of your screen. By clicking on the questions tab and entering a question, we will see the questions and be able to answer them at the end of the session. So we ask that you submit your questions throughout. The session is going to be between 15 and 20 minutes in length, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. And then we will get to your questions and we'll do our best to answer them. So today's session is on Wellness Workday. Stress impacts us in a variety of ways, physically, mentally, and emotionally, but also in our work too. Healthcare providers' experiences generally have higher levels of stress even at the best of times. So during these challenging times, healthcare workers' stress levels have intensified even more. Today, we're going to learn 3 hands-on strategies to help manage stress in our everyday lives and on the job. We're joined here today by Jake Surrett. Jake is a registered psychiatric nurse on HSC's Psychiatric Intensive Care Unit, a certified yoga and meditation teacher, and is a member of HSC's Critical Incident Stress Management team. Jake is enrolled in the Masters of Psychiatric Nursing program, where she is focusing on promoting healthcare worker resilience through stress management skills education. She has recently launched an independent practice, Be Well Unwind, providing stress management education and counseling. So like I said, if you're watching us live, you can ask your questions on the side. And if you are watching a rebroadcast session, you can submit questions to our email address afterwards. And I'll turn it over to you, Jake. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for choosing to take time out of your day to join this booster session. I am thrilled to be here, to have been chosen to present this month's session. So today, you will be learning a little bit about stress, but you'll also be learning some stress management strategies and to help manage with the stress we're all living in. And these strategies will be things that you can apply in your everyday life. So that hour in the bath is lovely, glorious, but not so helpful when you are in the midst of that stress. And so there will be opportunities for self-assessment. So I'll be asking you questions. There's no need to, this is about for you to check in with yourself rather than to answer in the chat. There will be an opportunity at the end if you wish to discuss some of your findings. For those who are live participants, you're welcome to share what you're learning. So a good synopsis there of what I was doing. Thank you for that introduction, Daniel. And so we'll begin. All right, so the first thing we'll do is, Be Well Unwind, that is me. All right, we'll do a self-assessment. So if you wish to plug in from a scale of 0 to 10, what your current stress level is, from 0 meaning not stressed at all, and 10 being the most stress you can imagine. And make a mental note, or if you have pen and paper handy or your phone or whatever you've got, to make a note of what your current stress level is. I will be asking again later, so you'll be able to compare. So stress, this is just one definition, there are many, but for our intents and purposes, so it's when our demands that are placed on us are beyond what the resources we have at our disposal to manage with it. So that sense of overwhelm, that is stress. I will quickly review some of the common stress symptoms. Keep in mind, this is the very Coles Notes version, and I'm not even touching on some of the long-term health or other consequences of chronic stress. That's a whole other webinar. Very interesting, though. So stress impacts us physically. Emotionally as well. Cognitively. In our relationships.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Jake, but your
Yes,
slides are not actually advancing.
they are not. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Okay.
Try restarting the PowerPoint show.
I will do so. Okay, where was I? Okay, I'll start at the physical. So
Yep, they're moving now.
there we are. Perfect. Okay, so kind of takes the wind away from my sails there. Anyway, so stress does impact us physically in these various ways, along with more than that. It impacts us emotionally, cognitively, in our relationships, and at work too. So you may have noticed that some of the stress symptoms and responses uh, will actually make things worse for us, and so there's a bit of a feedback loop. So we're making more mistakes. We know how stressful mistakes can be. So there are feedback loops basically at every one of those domains of how it impacts us. There are ways that the stress perpetuates itself and amplifies itself. So that's why I feel it's quite important to gain some skills to just dial that down, rein it in, so that we can help settle ourselves and calm our nervous systems and problem solve. So this is an invitation of self-inquiry, is that self-assessment. So what is one thing that contributes to your workday stress that you have little or no control over? So just make a mental note, write it down, whatever you got. We all have that, and it might be hard to limit it to one because there's a lot that we have very little control over at this time. And if you're running low on ideas, I will share some from prior participants. So unexpected traffic, technological issues, such as I was just facing a moment ago, heavy workload, and working in healthcare during a global pandemic. So whatever that uncontrollable stressor was, just make a note of it. And the next time it comes up and you're noticing that stress is coming up, use it. Use it as an opportunity to remind yourself to practice what we'll be doing next. So diaphragmatic breathing is the first practice we'll be doing, and it's helpful when the stress is beyond our control. When something has happened that we wish hadn't, let's say you make a mistake or you get some bad news, we wish it could go away. There's nothing we can do now that it's happened. Or maybe you just need to settle down before you can problem solve. So this is a practice you can take with you anywhere, middle of a busy work day, in the middle of traffic, during a difficult conversation. And so it's one that I highly recommend, that I use pretty well daily. So what we'll be doing is ideally breathing through our noses as best as possible. Allergies and all are a thing. And placing a hand on your belly. And we're going to inhale with the belly expanding. And we're going to exhale and letting that belly shrink down. And then we're going to hold. So there's a count here. So it'll be a count of 4, inhale. Count of 4, exhale. And holding for 2. Inhale. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Exhale and hold. So continuing on your own. That belly moving with your breath. And noticing any impact it has for you. If the pace is too fast or too slow, modify it for yourself. Just try to keep that inhale and exhale equal in duration and that hold about the half amount of time. So keep the breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing going as I go over some of the benefits of why the heck we're doing this. So very simply, it is linked with the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the relaxation response. And those cortisol levels, that's a stress hormone that incidentally has anti-melatonin properties. So if we're noticing why we can't sleep well while we're sleeping or while we're stressed, it's that cortisol is not helping us. So this breathing practice helps dial those down, and there's all sorts of benefits for our physical, mental, emotional well-being. And it can also be used as a daily practice, like 5 to 15 minutes of this breathing practice has many of those benefits. The next bit of inquiry is a check-in here. What is one thing that contributes to your workday stress that you can change, that you do have some control over? And please note, this is not at all about blame. This is actually about empowering us to take action, to make change where we are able to make change. So as you're trying to bring to mind one of these controllable stressors, I'll give you some of the examples that I've gotten from prior sessions. This would be not giving ourselves enough time to get ready or to commute, taking on too much, also known not saying no as much as we might be needing to, also procrastinating. Another thing that does impact that we do have control over is how we relate to ourselves and also how we relate to others. So these are things that we do have some control over, and that can have some great benefits for managing our stress. So problem-based coping is about targeting a specific stressor, or controllable stressor that is, trying to resolve it. So here's a list of some of the possible strategies that could be used. So take a look at those. I will go over a few of them that might not be familiar for some of the participants here today. So SMART goals, that's an acronym. Those are goals that are specific and measurable, achievable, realistic, and time limited. I will clean my office by Friday afternoon, for example. Assertive communication, that is direct, open, and honest communication. Saying no falls into that category, and it can be quite helpful in if there's any conflict management, of which there are more and more conflicts nowadays, is what I'm observing. So that can be really helpful in that domain as well. And then lastly, advocacy. That is speaking up or taking action to advance or protect your own or another's boundaries or rights. So taking that problem, that stressor that you do have control over, and I encourage you to find either there's a solution that I've listed or one that's come to you that isn't listed that you can apply. And I encourage you to follow through as you are able to after the session is complete. Something as simple as keeping the keys in a consistent place. I know for myself, it's change of season time here, so I'm wearing a different jacket every day of the week, and so I'm fumbling around, what jacket did I wear yesterday? So instead of storing my keys in my jacket, storing them in one place that is consistent. Just a simple example that's pretty benign. It doesn't compare to some of the stressors I'm sure we're all dealing with, but it illustrates how running late because you're looking all over looking for your keys, like that is something that we can have some control over if that is a pattern, for example. Last inquiry is around stress and how we know when we're stressed. So I asked you earlier to rate your stress level from that scale of 0 to 10. And here, this is around checking in. How do we know when we are stressed? Is it that our shoulders are tensing up, an emotional sense of overwhelm? Is it our thoughts are racing? So picking out your your signs of stress that that you can make note of. And the reason I'm encouraging this self-inquiry is that it can be used as a cue for us to stop and check in, uh, settle our nervous systems so that we can then better respond, problem solve, and deal with this situation at hand. So mindfulness is, of course, a great way of enhancing self-awareness. I'll go over the benefits in a moment. A simple definition is that mindfulness is consciously bringing our awareness to the here and now experience with openness, interest, and receptiveness. That's by Russell Harris. Mindfulness can be practiced informally and formally. I'll go over both. So informally, it is simply being aware in the present moment. This can be while we're brushing our teeth. This can be when we're doing hand hygiene. So while you're doing hand hygiene, just really noting the sensations, that moment to moment. We're there anyway doing hand hygiene 40, 50, 60 times a day anyway. Why not use it as a time to pause, check in, and be in the moment? On our breaks, we can do some mindful eating. That coffee or tea that you enjoy is going to taste a lot better if you're drinking mindfully. And then when we're dealing with a giant ball of stress and we don't even know where to begin, mindfulness might be a good practice as well, to just stop and check in. What's here now? So that is essentially the formal practice at its simplest, is stopping, breathing, and checking in. What's here right now? So I welcome you to take a comfortable but yet alert position. So we're not slouching in our chairs. We're sitting upright and tall and taking a deep, mindful breath. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. And take a moment to recall a time when you felt calm, when you felt safe. And just remember what that feels like. Know that that sense of ease or calm is accessible to you. And then feeling into your body. Your body as a collection of sensations. Just welcoming them all. And noticing your body breathing itself. Just the natural coming and going of the breath. Perhaps there's an emotion present. Welcoming it too. Noting your thoughts coming and going. Just being open, allowing them to come and go, like waves coming towards the shore. We're welcoming all that is coming and going. And feeling yourself aware of all that. And resting in that, just that moment-to-moment awareness. Noticing any impact this moment of mindfulness has had for you physically, mentally. And I will now go over the benefits. So when you're ready, opening your eyes. So this is a more extensive list. Essentially, though, mindfulness, there's more and more research on its benefits for our physical health, our behaviors, our mental health. That present moment awareness and life satisfaction, those are quite connected. That which in life that we're able to be present with, we're going to enjoy a lot more. And the more of that we have, the more satisfied we are. So these were a handful of coping skills. I encourage you to self-assess, to check in with yourself now. From 0 to 10, your current stress level. And you might notice how it compares with how we started. And I'm now going to review some resources and references. So these are some apps that are out there to help promote our mental health. There's some guided meditations. There's some sleep aid advice and ideas. This self-compassion.org, this is based on mindful self-compassion. There's increasingly interesting research on its benefits, especially as it relates to how we relate to ourselves. So there's many practices on creating a friendlier way of relating to ourselves. That first practice that's listed, self-compassion for caregivers, is geared exactly for caregivers, including healthcare professionals, parents, etc. So that's one. This is my website, bewellunwind.ca, where there's some practices and information on stress management. Here are some resources. Many of them are shared by Shared Health. They are links, so I encourage you to, if you want the PowerPoint, I don't know if that's something that's possible. And my many references and image credits. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, taking the time for yourself, for your mental, emotional well-being, to help manage stress during these challenging times. For those listening live, I encourage you to stick around. There will be an opportunity for questions, answers, some discussion. For those visiting remotely, thank you so much for taking the time. Be well.
Well, thank you for that, Jake. That was really good. I feel more relaxed having been doing some of the breathing with you guys. I hope everybody else noticed themselves going down on the stress scale. We have an opportunity for some questions right now, and if you look to the right side of your screen, you do have the GoToWebinar dashboard. People can input their questions, and we can answer them as they come in. I noticed when you were talking, especially about the mindfulness piece, you mentioned drinking our coffee mindfully. That might be a solution for some of us who are already drinking too much coffee, and instead of adding more, we just drink it more mindfully.
Well, yeah, exactly. That comes back to that satisfaction, right? So we'll likely enjoy it more and be more satisfied with less than drinking a full liter of coffee.
So while we're waiting for questions to come in, I had a question. You mentioned,
Sure.
part of what's going on right now is that there's things that we can change and there's things that we can't change, and understanding that and accepting that is a big part of, determining what we can and ought not to be stressed about. But one of the things you mentioned was advocacy, advocating for change for ourselves, for our coworkers. I was wondering if you could speak to that just very briefly, like just some suggestions about how to mindfully advocate, how to advocate without blurring our boundaries. Did you have any thoughts on that? I think that might be a valuable bit of insight for people.
Oops, sorry. I will just unshare my screen if that's okay.
Sure thing.
Just because it's causing me a little bit of it's being a little glitchy here. So in terms of advocacy, there's certainly that moral distress that we can experience when we are witnessing, or when when it comes to somebody else or somebody that we're caring for, where things might not be the way that we want them to be happening. And so in like working in healthcare right now, the quality of care that we're able to provide may not be the standard that we aim for in our practice. So that alone is really, really stressful. So I think that advocacy for our patients, our clients, our colleagues, even ourselves in those moments when you're like, this is not okay. I would definitely encourage that moment of mindfulness. So rather than being reactive, of really taking that time to check in, what's here now, what's mine and what isn't mine. So if something is triggering you from your own past, of distinguishing that and tending to that, maybe it wasn't about the client or your colleague, and maybe this was more triggering for you. And so maybe taking some time to process that before responding.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of change in healthcare right now. A lot of change that it feels that we either have very little control over, or it feels like we have very little control over. Um, there are avenues, with mixed results, of course, but there are avenues to be able to have our voices heard. Various practice committees, depending on your management and leadership and how receptive they are to feedback on how things can change. And I know for myself, I'm always I'm a lot more open to hearing feedback when there's a solution attached to it. And I think there's many of us who do have ideas on how we could be navigating these times in a way that is healthier for ourselves, for our teams, for the people that we care for. And so sharing some of those ideas, those are some of the things that come to my mind.
Thank you, Jake. That's very good advice. And I think especially, the idea that these are pretty unprecedented times, and healthcare system transformation would be challenging even if we weren't in the midst of a global pandemic. And the fact we've got
Yeah.
both going on right now is just, I think it's a good reminder that a lot of our reactions and our experience are probably normal given the circumstances, even though the circumstances are far from normal.
Yeah,
You said a couple of
our responses to the stress, these are normal responses to abnormal situations.
I like that. Yeah, normal responses to abnormal situations. We just had a couple of questions come in. People saying thank you, and they found the presentation very helpful. One person saying that they would like to watch it again, and you will be able to. There are rebroadcast times in the original communication that you saw to sign up, and on Shared Health's website. And the video on demand will be available, and you may even be watching it right now on Shared Health's website. The last question that we had was, is it possible to get a copy of the PowerPoint? And I believe that we'll be posting some resources, some of the PowerPoint for most of our booster sessions on Shared Health's website as well. So just watch for that.
I'll send that your way, Daniel, for you to pass that along.
For sure. And people say, again, more comments saying thank you. So it seems like it was a timely presentation for people. And that's our time for today. So Jake, thank you so much for sharing this with us. It was educational, and it was, I think, practical. I think people are going to be able to walk away from today and be able to do things a little bit different, which is always a success. So we want to thank everybody for coming out and thank them for taking their time to be with us for this booster session. And thank you again, Jake, for your time and your expertise.
Thank you.